of Washington. He's also a ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, first, I want to get your reaction to Ukraine claiming they were not informed about Trump officials meeting with senior Russian officials in Saudi Arabia in the coming days. What is your reaction?
Well, the most alarming thing about what Trump and his administration have been saying, they have not talked about the need to make sure that Ukraine has security guarantees. I mean, they've talked about the compromise, they're talking with the Russians, but look, Putin won't stop if he thinks Ukraine is defenseless. We need to make it clear, and our European allies do as well, that security guarantees for Ukraine are a cornerstone of any negotiation. So that's the biggest thing I'm worried about. That he's talking with the Russians is fine. He certainly shouldn't sideline the Ukrainians. It's worth being worried about that. But Secretary Hegseth, Secretary Rubio, Mike Waltz, Donald Trump, I haven't heard a single one of them say Ukraine needs to be strong enough to defend itself. And we, the U.S. and our partners, are going to continue to be committed to that, even as we try to stop the war, which needs to be done. There needs to be a negotiated settlement. But you're not going to get a negotiated settlement by simply showing weakness to Putin.
And as you know, European leaders plan to hold an emergency summit after Trump's special envoy to Russia and Ukraine, General Keith Kellogg, announced that Europe will not be part of these talks. Do you think that's a mistake?
Well, I think it's a mistake if you're not consulting them. Look, you can't have, we have a 53-nation coalition that's been helping Ukraine defend itself. I don't imagine a scenario where all 53 nations are represented sitting around the table as Ukraine and Russia and the U.S. try to work it out. But if you're completely ignoring that coalition, that's a huge problem. And that's certainly the signal that President Trump, Vice President Vance as well have sent. They've been brushing off the Europeans and pushing them away in a way that undermines our alliance, undermines our strength, and again shows weakness to Vladimir Putin. So completely shoving the Europeans to the side, I think, is a huge mistake, even as we attempt to negotiate an end to this war.
And as you know, there are fears Russia's part in these negotiations will not be in good faith. This week, the Vice President, J.D. Vance, told the Wall Street Journal that there are ways for the U.S. to keep Russia honest, saying, quote, there are economic tools of leverage. There are, of course, military tools of leverage. Do you agree?
Well, I think there are tools of leverage that we can use. What I'm worried about, as I said at the outset, is we don't seem to be using them right now. I've heard some talk from President Trump about sanctions on Russia, no talk about making sure that Ukraine continues to be armed so that they can defend themselves. So, yeah, there's tools of leverage. I think you also need to be mindful of the fact that you can't trust anything that Putin says. We'll go back to Ronald Reagan, right? Trust but verify. And the way you verify is you put Ukraine in a strong enough position to defend itself so that Putin can't lie and take advantage of some of the mistakes that Trump has made in the way he has articulated this. So that's the big concern. Are we going to keep supporting Ukraine? The White House still has a lot of money at its disposal that we passed in Congress to help Ukraine defend itself. He needs to make it clear that we're going to give Ukraine that support.
I want to turn to some of the questions here at home. Elon Musk and Doge are, of course, uprooting and trying to overhaul large swaths of the federal government. The Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, says he welcomes Musk to come to the Pentagon very soon to, quote, find billions of dollars to save. As a ranking member of the Armed Services Committee, have you received any information about what Doge could be planning to do at the Pentagon?
No, I met with one of the lower level officials with Doge to talk through some of this. But as you know, Musk and Trump, they're not telling anyone what they're doing. They're showing up and they're firing people randomly all across the board in a wide variety of agencies. And it seems at the moment to be more about asserting the power of Elon Musk and Donald Trump than it is about any sort of government efficiency or effectiveness. You're not making USAID more efficient and more effective by shutting it down and firing everybody. You're not making the Consumer Financial Protection Board more effective by completely shutting it down. And, oh, by the way, taking away regulations from a lot of things that Elon Musk and a lot of his oligarchical buddies are worried about. So there doesn't seem to be a focus of Doge on efficiency or effectiveness. The focus seems to be on power. Look, you could make the Pentagon a lot more efficient and effective. The reason I reached out to them, and I've reached out and asked to meet with Elon Musk, I've been rebuffed. I think there's a lot of things we could do to make the Pentagon work better. But if you're going in there and you're just firing people and you're doing it to make sure that you've got loyalists, people who will do whatever Trump and Musk ask them, that's not efficiency and effectiveness. That's just a raw exercise of power that isn't going to make our country any stronger or more efficient or more effective.
All right, now, before I let you go, I have to ask you about the government funding deadline that's coming up in less than a month. How are you planning to work with Republicans to ensure there is no government shutdown, or will this all be up to the GOP to avoid a shutdown?
Yeah, I mean, there's two steps here. There's that, and then there's the reconciliation package, both of which are increasingly connected. And look, the appropriations process is simple. We should set top lines in a pass appropriations bills. That's what we want to do. That's what we Democrats have been urging Republicans to do for a while. If the Republicans just want to do a continuing resolution throughout the rest of the year, which guts government, does great damage to the Department of Defense, by the way, since it's over half of the discretionary budget. And now they don't have a budget. They can't plan. That's not a good plan. Look, we want to keep the government open and funded. So put a plan on the table. Meanwhile, the reconciliation process that would basically cut taxes by $4 to $7 trillion, massively drive up the debt while gutting needed services for the American people. We're not for that. OK, we're for funding the government. We're for raising the debt ceiling. But they're doing it in a way that is going to raise the debt, cut taxes for the wealthiest amongst us, and take away vital programs to people. So we're not going to be for that. They want to negotiate and get us a sensible budget. All for it. And I know the appropriators right now are still engaged in those discussions about the March 14th deadline. But those are the basic principles that we Democrats